because I've been receiving phone calls that people don't feel safe coming here. And it's not the immigrants. It's this government that is making them feel unsafe. We didn't have a hearing on Buffalo and what happened there. We didn't have a hearing on El Paso and what happened there. So it's interesting that they pick and choose because it seems like they love to pal around with the white supremacists, and so they don't want to talk about certain other things. But a lot of people believe that Republicans are fiscally responsible, but instead they are actually fiscally irresponsible because what he spent was a whopping $221 million transporting people from Texas to your state. Are you aware, any of you, are you aware as to whether or not tourism in the United States is anticipated to decrease to the extent that we are estimated to lose $12.5 billion in international vendor spending in just the year 2025?
I can answer as the tourism capital of the country.
I assume you could.
Tourism is already down. It is down in the North Country where the Canadians refuse to come over because of the hostility toward their country. The ripple effects throughout our entire economy because of the change in attitude that our country, that once welcomed people from all over the world to visit and recreate and to live here, now feels like a very hostile place to them.
Crockett framed the central question simply. Are we talking about real public safety, or are we staging a spectacle to score political points? That distinction matters because policy and theater have very different consequences for people's lives and for the health of our democracy.
And thank you so much to our governors. And I want to say I apologize. I apologize for the abuse that you are facing in this committee that is supposed to be about waste, fraud, and abuse. And I also apologize for wasting your time because this is nothing more than political theater. Now, again, this committee is supposed to be about waste, fraud, and abuse. We did not have to have this faux creation of Doge. The committee itself, that is our job. So what I want to talk about is something that the American people may want to know, which is economically, how is this impacting them? These failed immigration policies that are only put on so that they can have a show because we have a reality show president who seemingly still believes that this is all about TV instead of real lives. So let me talk about something really quickly because I want to clarify something because I believe that all of you understand the importance of something like tourism. Are you aware, any of you, are you aware as to whether or not tourism in the United States is anticipated to decrease to the extent that we are estimated to lose $12.5 billion in international vendor spending in just the year 2025?
I can answer as the tourism capital of the country.
I assume you could.
Tourism is already down. It is down in the North Country where the Canadians refuse to come over because of the hostility toward their country. It's happening in New York City. It's happening at our sporting events here, our theater. There's a ripple effect throughout our entire economy because of the change in attitude that our country, that once welcomed people from all over the world to visit and recreate and to live here, now feels like a very hostile place to them. It is going to have an economic impact on our bottom line without a doubt.
So let's talk about it a little bit more. So I am supposed to have a number of FIFA games in Dallas, and I am fully anticipating that we are going to have a problem because I've been receiving phone calls that people don't feel safe coming here, and it's not the immigrants. It's this government that is making them feel unsafe. But let me also do this, because they love to cherry pick. They can find, any one person that has been killed. And if they've been killed by an immigrant, then God darn it, every single immigrant is going out and they are killers. And that is the problem. But they don't want to talk about white supremacy. I don't know how many hearings we going to have about the fact that there's been this one immigrant that killed this one person. And no, I'm not excusing any killings by them or white supremacists. But they haven't had these hearings. We didn't have a hearing on Buffalo and what happened there. We didn't have a hearing on El Paso and what happened there. We didn't have a hearing on Charleston and what happened there. So it's interesting that they pick and choose because it seems like they love to pal around with the white supremacists, and so they don't want to talk about certain other things. But economically, I want to make sure that we're making this point again because I know that Governor Pritzker, you were the beneficiary of a lot of things from the state of Texas. And a lot of people believe that Republicans are fiscally responsible, but instead they are actually fiscally irresponsible because what he spent was a whopping $221 million transporting people from Texas to your state. Something tells me that he could have done something else with that $221 million. In addition to that, I know that there's been some conversations about what's going on in LA, and they want to say that it's riots because they didn't want people to keep talking about, say, the Epstein files or whatever other drama was popping off between the president and his little friend. So they wanted to change the conversation to immigration because they feel like, well, the polling is in our benefit. But let me tell you something. If they cared about making sure we were going to be fiscally responsible, they would tell the American people that it cost them $134 million to send the National Guard to LA for the quote-unquote riots that the governor didn't ask for, nor did the mayor of LA ask for, and they sent them over there, and they say that they care about our service members, yet they sent them and they were laying on the floor. They did not provide for food. So I don't know why we would believe that, number one, they want to fix this. They don't want to fix this. Because the brokenness is a feature, not a flaw of the system, because it is beneficial to them when it comes to campaigning. If they can't stoke fear, then why are they going to say have anybody vote for them? Because that's what people are doing. They're voting out of fear. But Ms. Perryman, we know each other a little well. And I know you got a law degree. And it seems like we all need law degrees in here nowadays to understand the Constitution. So really briefly, I just want to make this point. There is a certain person that was afforded, say, due process. But let's say if Donald Trump had been charged with all of these cases that he got charged with in 4 different jurisdictions, if he wasn't afforded due process, there could have been a possibility that he just would have been locked up and thrown somewhere, right?
That would be a possibility.
And then maybe we wouldn't have a tariff war or anything else that we're dealing with or all the other nonsense. But the point is, he was afforded due process, and regardless of the political opposition, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, I thought, believe that due process should be afforded to everybody, even him.
Due process is for everyone.
Okay, so the Fifth Amendment doesn't say that it's just for the people that are Americans?
It does not.
It says anybody on our soil?
It's for everyone.
Okay, it's pretty simple. I don't know why we are having issues.
What Congresswoman Crockett did in that exchange, bringing her experience as a criminal lawyer into this debate, was exactly the kind of sober, evidence-first pushback we need when politics gets loud and messy. Let's take the claim you hear nonstop from MAGA talking points, that immigrants commit more crime than U.S. citizens. That's not supported by the best research. Multiple studies and reviews show that immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, are arrested and incarcerated at lower rates than native-born Americans. In plain terms, the data do not back the idea that immigrants are a crime wave. That empirical reality changes the stakes of Crockett's point. If immigrants are not driving violent crime, then the constant, breathless headlines about immigrant criminals are doing political work, not public safety work. They divert attention and resources from where we actually should be focusing, on evidence-based interventions, targeted law enforcement against real criminal networks, and investments in treatment, prevention, and community safety. Crockett also reminded the chamber that our laws already criminalize dangerous conduct and re-entry after deportation. Federal statutes make unlawful re-entry a criminal offense, and ICE issues detainers to hold people who are in criminal custody so immigration authorities can assume custody if removal is appropriate. Those tools exist, but they're technical and legal. They work when used responsibly, not when they're waved around for a congressional show. The most important moral point Crockett made is about selective outrage. If you're going to hold hearings on violence, you don't get to cherry-pick when to care. The Buffalo shooter, the Charleston church shooter, and the El Paso shooter were not foreign nationals hiding in the shadows. They were U.S.-born men motivated by white supremacist ideology. Those tragedies were driven by homegrown extremism. Yet much of the political energy in these hearings is spent blaming immigrants for threats they are not statistically responsible for. That's not an accident. It's a framing choice with consequences. Those extreme right actors aren't a marginal problem. Recent analyses show that right-wing and white supremacist extremists were responsible for a large share of extremist-related murders in recent years, a reality that evidence-based policy must confront. If policymakers truly want to reduce mass violence and extremist murders, they must follow the data, target the ideology, the networks, and the means, rather than scapegoating immigrant communities. There's also a public health angle that politicians often exploit: fentanyl and the broader opioid crisis. Fentanyl is now the primary driver of opioid overdose deaths in the U.S., and the supply chain is complicated. Illegal manufacturing, precursor chemicals, and cartel networks, not legal immigration processes, are central to the crisis. That means the immigration equals fentanyl epidemic shortcut is misleading. Fixing the overdose crisis requires public health investments, cross-border law enforcement cooperation focused on supply chains, treatment expansion, and social supports, not xenophobic rhetoric. Crockett's rhetorical strategy, rhetoric versus reality, works because it forces lawmakers and the public to wrestle with the difference between fear-baiting and fact-based policymaking. Real solutions look like this. Strengthen prosecution of violent offenders regardless of citizenship. Expand addiction treatment and harm reduction programs, fund community violence prevention, and invest in targeted domestic extremism prevention that doesn't infringe on civil liberties. Those are the kinds of policies that reduce harm and build trust in communities. Some local officials and law enforcement leaders are already pushing back on simplistic detainer-first approaches because they know those strategies can erode community trust and make policing harder, not safer. There's a practical democratic test here. Do you support policies that actually make people safer, or do you support posturing that scares people so a politician can win a headline? Crockett's lived experience, working criminal cases in Texas and Arkansas, gives her credibility when she says she wants real fixes. That's why she presses the committee to move beyond slogans and toward legislation that is enforceable, constitutional, and grounded in evidence. If you want to turn Crockett's argument into real-world pressure, here are 3 concrete actions you can take right now. First, call or email your member of Congress and demand a hearing agenda that centers evidence, fund treatment and prevention, require oversight of detainer use, and support domestic extremism programs that target ideology and networks, not entire communities. Second, support local organizations and legal services that protect due process and help immigrant victims and witnesses cooperate safely with law enforcement. Community trust is how we solve crime. Third, push for investments in public health, expanded access to medication-assisted treatment, naloxone distribution, and razor-focused supply chain enforcement because those save lives now, whereas fear-based stunts only make elections loud and people poorer. Crockett's point wasn't theatrics, it was a test. Do we want policy grounded in data and dignity, or do we want headlines that hollow out our institutions? If you care about safer streets, healthier communities, and a justice system that treats victims and accused people fairly, then demand substance over spectacle. That's how you turn outrage into accountability and theater into lasting public safety.